It's our joy to return to the book of Proverbs. You'll remember that we concluded last year chapter 18, and the last sermon was 18:24, in which we heard of the friend that sticketh closer than a brother. And I must say, I'm pleased, boys, to see you serve each other, not just as classmates, but as friends. I commend that, and I encourage you in it. But now in chapter 19, verse 10, we have the opportunity to address an issue that is important in all times, and especially in ours: egalitarianism. So let's turn to Proverbs 19. Proverbs 19. Our text will be verse 10. And I'll read through verse 20. Better is the poor that walketh in his integrity than he that is perverse in his lips and is a fool. Also that the soul be without knowledge, it is not good, and he that hasteth with his feet sinneth. The foolishness of man perverteth his way, and his heart fretteth against the Lord. Wealth maketh many friends, but the poor is separated from his neighbor. A false witness shall not be unpunished, and he that speaketh lies shall not escape. Many will entreat the favor of the prince, and every man is a friend to him that giveth gifts. All the brethren of the poor do hate him. How much more do his friends go far from him? He pursueth them with words, yet they are wanting to him. He that getteth wisdom loveth his own soul. He that keepeth understanding shall find good. A false witness shall not be unpunished, and he that speaketh lies shall perish. Delight is not seemly for a fool, much less for a servant to have rule over princes. The discretion of a man deferreth his anger, and it is his glory to pass over a transgression. The king's wrath is as the roaring of a lion, but his favor is as dew upon the grass. A foolish son is the calamity of his father, and the contentions of a wife are a continual dropping. House and riches are the inheritance of fathers, and a prudent wife is from the Lord. Slothfulness casteth into a deep sleep, and an idle soul shall suffer hunger. He that keepeth the commandment keepeth his own soul, but he that despiseth his ways shall die. He that hath pity upon the poor lendeth unto the Lord, and that which he hath given will he pay him again. Chasten thy son while there is hope, and let not thy soul spare for his crying. A man of great wrath shall suffer punishment, but if thou deliver him, yet thou must do it again. Hear counsel and receive instruction, that thou mayest be wise in thy latter end. Proverbs 19:10. God did not make all men equal. Spiritually, he made some elect and some reprobate. Morally, he made some wise and some fools. Naturally, he made some strong and smart, and others weak and stupid. Economically, he made some wealthy and some poor. Racially, he made some white and some black. Domestically, he made some parents and some children. And socially, in our text, he made some princes and some servants. Men are not equal. God made this so, and this is good. Egalitarianism is the lie told in every age that this inequality is either not true, or if it's true, it's not good. Rather, it's a problem to be fixed by cutting all men down to the same level. Egalitarians would, as far as in them lies, destroy inequalities, usually by destroying those who are their betters. They're motivated in this by envy. They say in their heart, "Why did God give you more gifts than me? That's not fair." They're angry at men but ultimately they are angry with God, and they deny his right to give according to his pleasure some gifts to some and not to others. And in this way, they deny his sovereignty and therefore deny that he is God. Egalitarianism is a subtle form of atheism. It is a major error of our day. And this proverb, 1910, from 3,000 years ago, clearly addresses and condemns it. It does so by condemning it in two forms. First, moral egalitarianism, treating men as if they were all the same morally, though some are fools and some are wise. It says, "Delight is not seemly for a fool. It is wrong to give honor to the morally dishonorable." Delight is that of a life of comfort, of luxury, even of pampering, the way that kings and princes live, with great comforts and pleasures. If anyone deserves such pleasure in this life, it is the wise and not the fool. As Asaph mourned in Psalm 73, life is often the opposite, so that fools are pampered and the wise have a hard life. Solomon said this too in Ecclesiastes. It seems to our eyes sometimes that providence is indiscriminate, for the same end, especially death, happens to both the wise and the fool. This is part of this world's vanity. But that doesn't mean that as to our duty, this is right. It is not seemly, that is not fitting, not appropriate for a fool to have delight. So that's against moral egalitarianism. But second, Solomon speaks against social egalitarianism. He says, much less, that is it seemly, for a servant to have rule over princes. He says much less because this is how obvious it is. It's more obvious than the first, that delight is not seemly for a fool. But also, it's more destructive. Now, we might think, because of the importance of morality, that moral egalitarianism is worse. But God here, in a sense, says otherwise. And I think you can understand it if I put this to you. Say that there's a prince, and morally, he is a fool. He's a very bad man. But this foolish prince has the natural gifts to be a prince. He has some skill in managing the country, and he does some things well, though he is a fool in God's eyes. Replace him with a servant whose only experience has been serving tables, who has no experience managing a country and has shown no aptitude or virtue for it. If this servant were a wise man, that would not itself make him ready to be a prince. And if you replaced the prince with him, even though the prince was a fool, the result would be disaster. Isaiah 3:12 speaks this way. I'll turn there. As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. It is a shame for the weaker vessel to rule over the strong, even if women were virtuous in their own capacity and place. They're wise women. It would not be wise to make them rule. It would be naturally inappropriate. What would happen if one of you boys replaced our president? In some ways, you're much wiser than he is. But I dare say it would not be good for our country, for a 9-year-old to rule, even if he were a wise 9-year-old. It would also be against our Constitution, which requires you to be at least 35 years old to be the president. But usually, we add to this that it is not just a matter of natural gifts and social place that's being dealt with here. It's often the case that servants should not become princes for moral reasons, too. Often, servants have their lowly place, their vile place, because they have a vile character. They are fools as well, just as princes often obtain their noble place because they have a noble character that's fitting to it. This, at least, is how it should be. It's possible the man here is not only a servant, but also a fool, and thus it is much less fitting for him to be a prince because of his double failure, because of others' double failure, to recognize this man is unfit to rule. So this text is against both moral and social egalitarianism. And we can summarize the doctrine from it this way. It is evil to overturn God's ordained social order. It is evil to overturn God's ordained social order. He has made some men princes and some men servants, and that is good. And to flip it on its head is evil. But that's what egalitarianism does. The Bible, various places, speaks against this evil. And another is Proverbs 30, verse 22. In 21, he says, there are 3 things under which the earth is disquieted, and 4 which it cannot bear. It troubles the earth, so to speak, when these things happen. And the first is verse 22. For a servant when he reigneth. When a servant becomes a prince, the whole earth shakes. Or, as the psalm says, the foundations are destroyed. Another place is Ecclesiastes chapter 10, and you see in all 3 places, our text, Proverbs 30:22 and Ecclesiastes 10, that Solomon, of all men, was well acquainted with this error and spoke plainly against it. Ecclesiastes 10, verse 6, folly is set in great dignity, and the rich sit in a low place. You see there the connection between wisdom and wealth. He assumes that there is a connection between folly and slavery and wisdom and riches, as we read throughout the Proverbs. And then he says, I have seen servants upon horses and princes walking as servants upon the earth. And he implies this is very evil. It shouldn't be. So all this comes together to prove it is evil to overturn God's ordained social order. God made it so, and we ought not unmake it. Now, I could go on to prove it more, but I think it's more useful here to apply these things. The first application, boys, is you need to know your place. You need to know your place. There are some respects in which you are servants. That is, you are inferiors. You are a child and not a man. You are a student and not a teacher. You are a church member and not a pastor, not an elder. You are a subject and not a ruler. You are not president. You are not governor. You are not sheriff. You aren't even dog catcher. You are by nature a sinner, a child of wrath. And that's the worst of all, the worst inferiority of all. But in all these things, no matter what you are a creature and not the creator. And thus there is always a need in this place to be humble. Boys, you need to know your place and not presume to be anything other than you are. Not to act like a man when you're a child. Not to act like the teacher when you're a student. Not to rule like a king when you're just a subject. Not to pretend that you are righteous when you are a sinner. Not ever to act like the creator when you are but a creature. Know your place. But also, you need to know your place as a superior. You might not think of yourself as a superior, but there are some ways in which you certainly are. The first way is that you are male and not female. You are boys and not girls. And as boys, you are superior. You are the stronger vessel. And Peter explains that the woman is the weaker vessel. Now, this does not mean that you can exalt yourself presently against your mother because you remain a boy. Even when you're a man, the commandment applies, honor thy father and thy mother. But you would then are subordinate to your mother as her son, but not properly as a man. As a man, a male, you are superior to girls. You are superior as a white man. As such, as a son of Japheth, and not of Ham or Shem, you have the elder son's blessing. He has been enlarged throughout the earth in ways that other men have not, and you share in that enlargement because you come from him. You are his son. You are a son of the Greeks, of the Romans, of the Germans, of the English. And now especially you are sons of the Americans. And being an American, even among white men, you have privileges and power that no other man on earth has. Our enemies will tell you this very thing. They call it white privilege. And there's no use denying it. You have it. You are superior and great because you are white men and Americans. Next, you are middle class. And what this means is you are not poor. Now, there may be times when you feel poor and you lack this or that, but you are not living in poverty. You are not wealthy either, and you shouldn't presume to be rich men among Americans. However, when you compare yourself to the whole world, someone in your place in America is like a king. You have financial privileges that many in the world could only dream of. You are very wealthy compared to the rest of the world, though you're in the middle compared to many in America. And that's a place of some superiority. Boys, you also are intelligent. It's one reason you are in this school. This is not a school for girls, nor is it a school for every boy. You are here because you have a mind that is able to endure the rigors of the education we have put before you. And you ought to be well aware, though humble, that such a mind is not the possession of every boy. You are able to do English, to do math, to do Latin in a way and in a speed unlike many others. That's a privilege. It's a way you are superior. And you are being educated then in a way appropriate to that intelligence, and your education, your school that you have today sets you far above many who lack this privilege. I'd add to this the greater spiritual privilege that you are baptized Christians. That among all the boys of this world, God chose you to put you in a Christian family, to put you in a Christian church, to put baptism upon your forehead and to claim you as his own. And if, boys, indeed you are converted, trusting in the Lord Jesus Christ, you are a son of God. You are elect from before the foundation of the world. And he has changed you so that you are not a fool, but wise. You are a wise boy. And if you look at all the boys in this world, it should be obvious that you have been set apart. And though you have much remaining folly, God has been exceedingly good. So you need to know your place, not just as a servant and inferior, but so to speak, as a prince, as a superior. On the one hand, you ought not overestimate who you are. Romans 12:3 speaks of this. For I say, through the grace given unto me, to every man that is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think. Don't exalt yourself beyond measure. But then he goes on to say, but to think soberly according as God hath dealt to every man the measure of faith. It speaks of spiritual things, but it's also true in natural things. It would be wrong to overestimate your gifts. But in our age, we have to add it's wrong to underestimate them also. And there's a twisted sort of pride and folly because of egalitarianism that would have you lie about your place as a prince. The world would have you think that you are less than God made you to be. Envious inferiors, servants, would try to convince you, their superiors, the princes, that you are nothing special. And they do this in order to invert the social order and so that they may rule over you. Do not allow it. Rather, know your place. First application. Second, and more briefly, following from this, is be content in your place. The chief virtue needed here is humility. And humility is willing to be a servant, if that's indeed what God has made you. And to be a servant of the Lord, to be a doorkeeper in the house of God, is better than to be a prince living in the tents of wickedness. But even insofar as you are a superior, you also have to serve as such. And therefore you must flee a false humility that would refuse to take upon you the burden of responsibility that your greater gifts has given. Boys, you are in many respects, as far as I can see, destined for greatness. And if you say to God, no, thank you, I'd rather be a plumber, I'd rather just do nothing, I'd rather be a servant, that would be refusing God's good gifts. And boys, that is not humble. It's actually proud. It's the pride of Moses, this great man who from his youth was known to be great. His parents could look at him and see he was a fine child. And God came to him and said, go to Pharaoh and let my people go. And he said, send someone else. Was that humility? No. It might have looked like that, or he thought it was, but it wasn't humble. It was proud. Flee that and be content and humble in your place, serving not with someone else's gifts, but with your own. And then third and finally, you ought to seek elevation rightly. It is a good and natural thing to want more. God is not denying here that it's right to want a higher state than you have. Of course, if you could choose, you'd rather be wealthy than poor. You'd rather be strong than weak, wouldn't you? Who wouldn't? The key is not that we wouldn't want the higher things, but that we would be content with what God gave. God tells us in Romans 2 that Christians are those who seek glory and honor and immortality. And he exalted Joseph and Daniel, and it's not wrong for them to have embraced that and wanted it. Paul tells the slave, even in 1 Corinthians 7:21, that if he can seek his freedom, he ought to. That is, given all the things we spoke of, and with a true humility and contentment, it's still possible to want more. So boys, It would not be good for you to be president now. But might it be good when you are a well-trained, wise, Christian 35-year-old or older? Well, it could be. It would not be good for you to be a mighty minister and reformer now. But could that be your calling later in life? And if it were, would it be wrong for you to take it up? Certainly not. And I hope for at least some of you, it's what God will call you to. We are training you for roles like this here in this school. And so I encourage you with humility and with wisdom and for God's glory and make man's good, even totally content with where you are, seek the better things that God might exalt you in due time. Let's stand and pray.